Thank you, Deja, for joining me today. I'm super excited to learn more about your career path because you've done quite a lot of different things, or you dabbled in quite a lot of different things. So, really excited to hear about your career journey and how you kind of navigated trying different roles, what you learned about yourself by trying so many different things and so forth. But of course, I would love for you to be able to talk about your experiences and so forth. So, if you can give me an overview of your career journey, starting with what you studied in college, that would be great.
Wow, we're diving right in. Okay.
Yeah, of course.
But thank you for having me today. I'm so excited to be here. This is actually my first podcast, even though technically we're recording it like in a video form. So I don't know if that's still considered a podcast, but thank you. So yeah, let's take a step back. So I got my bachelor's in communications and my concentration was entertainment studies. During that time, I was gun ho that I was going to be the next entertainment lawyer, and like something about legal and law and entertainment was all very enticing to me. So during my undergraduate years, I sought after different internships because I think that is the best way to get and dabble into different career opportunities and see like the day in the life. I mean, you can take classes all you want in school, but actually being able to put things into practice and see what they're like really takes things to the next level. And you get to like network with people in those different roles and like put like life into those positions to see if this is something you could actually do. So during my undergraduate years, I got different internships. My internships were all very, very different. I did one where I was on the road tour managing, acting as the assistant to the tour manager and like selling merchandise on different tours. Super cool. During that internship, I met somebody that was like an entertainment lawyer for one of the artists there because I had been asked to sell their merchandise and the guy wasn't willing to negotiate a price with me. And so I negotiated a little bit more than he was allowed to give me, but he didn't realize it until after the fact. And I was just like, oh, wow, that was easy. Like, press one of those buttons. And so his manager, which ended up being the lawyer, ends up coming out and she's like, who swindled you? And she sees like this little freshman and she's like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, you're a grown man and you just got swindled by a freshman. And I was just like, hey. But that ended up opening a door because then she kind of took me under her wing, asked me what it was that I was interested in, and I asked her what it was that she did and told her like I'm kind of interested in entertainment law, but I don't know what exactly that entails. Like it's very broad, very big, very vague. So she let me intern with her in New York the following summer. Super cool, lots of contracts, very much so nothing that I was expecting. So then the following summer, I ended up working in HR for like an amusement park. So the theme park Universal Studios, I worked at the lot for NBC Universal for their theme park. And again, ended up running into another entertainment lawyer. And he took me under his wing and like he was showing me like the lawyers at the upper lot are different from the lawyers at the lower lot. The lower lot were more so for like the TV shows and the movies, and the upper lot was more so for the theme park. And like they were entertainment lawyers as well because you had like your performers that you wouldn't normally think of, but like there are performers at theme parks. I mean, think of like Disney and how they have the different princesses, the different shows. So you have to make sure all of that is together as well. And when he was telling me about his job, I was like, yeah, no, this still doesn't sound like what I envisioned
Mm-hmm.
entertainment law to look like. So collectively, with the two of them, one on the East Coast, one on the West Coast, they had me make a promise to them that before I went to law school, for me to take a year off after I graduated and got my bachelor's, and actually go and work in the field, and see if this was something that I really wanted, because they both collectively felt like I would thrive more in like a management position, or like a to be like a sports agent or entertainment agent or like somebody's manager. And they're like, an actual entertainment lawyer, unless you are, I forget like the technicalities of what they said, but basically they were like, someone's always going to have to sign off on what you do unless you're like the big person. And it's a lot of paperwork. Like, you're not in the field as much as you thought you were. It's not like what you see on TV. That's not the lawyer. That might be the manager or the agent who also has a law degree. And so I was just like, okay, that puts things into perspective. So I went out after I graduated and got my bachelor's, and was applying to different legal positions in like entertainment. Um, and so I stumbled upon this opportunity at Playboy, which is very funny.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and of course, when I talked to them, they were like, well, that was a little bit more extreme than what we had in mind. And I was like, to me, like, yes, I had to really think it out, but they shared a building with an agency, like a entertainment agency. So like those agents had clients that were musicians, actors, actresses,
Mm-hmm.
different like athletes and stuff like that, writers. And so it was kind of like the best of both. I can go and mingle with them because we shared the same building, and ask them questions about like, what does your job entail, the day to day. And then also there was a component at Playboy when I got to help out with the legal department as well. Quickly realized I didn't want to do either one of those. So then,
Mm-hmm. What did you not like about the roles?
um, so being an agent was very cutthroat. And I was just like, wow,
Mm.
which is pretty funny because I wanted to be a lawyer, go figure. But I didn't want to do, like, I didn't want to be stuck in the office, which is also very funny, go figure. Looking at paperwork or reading contracts all day. Like, I wanted to also be in the field and, like, get to see the glamorized side of things. Like, I don't know. I want to be, if I had a sports client, I wanted to be on the field with them, like signing contracts or like negotiating deals. Like, I really enjoyed the negotiation aspect of it, and being able to like help from that point of view. And then, of course, the perks that come with like any entertainment job, like, oh, free tickets here, free tickets there. Yay. But I quickly realized like, oh no, I don't want to deal with like the complaints and the stuff like this on a bigger scale. And like, both an agent and your lawyer, you kind of have to answer to their beck and call whenever. So like, if something happens last minute, like, you can't be like, oh yeah, I'm on vacation right now, like I can't handle this. It's like, no, this is pretty dire in both situations, whether you're their agent or their lawyer. Like, you have to do damage control. And I didn't know if that was something that I wanted to do, is just always doing damage control. Love it for the people who love it, but just trying to be realistic with myself. Like, is this something that you're gonna be okay with? And kind of having like a self realization moment. It was definitely a hard pill to swallow, because like, you prep all your life, or like at that point all your life, for what you think it is that you want to study. I mean, you start looking at things when you're in like high school, and then when you get to college, you are asked like, oh, well, even before you get to college, when you're in high school, they're like, well, what do you think you want to do with your life? And it's like, I don't know. Like, I like going to parties. Like, I don't know. And so it's just like, you find different things where you're like, I find that I think this is entertaining. I think I can see myself doing it. But again, you don't really know until you know and you're in it. And then you can start asking questions, getting experience, seeing like, oh wow, like, I didn't realize it came with all of this. And is this something that I'm willing to do, or in some some situations it's like, am I willing to compromise this area of my life for this? Does this perk outweigh this? Like really looking at it holistically now that you have a better understanding of what it is that you like. So I was super, super grateful for those two mentors for taking me under their wing and really like putting that into perspective because I had already had like LSAT books, was studying for the LSAT.
Wow.
Like I was
I felt like you
committed.
were, it seemed like it too. You had the opportunities. You like met people along the way and you were set. Like you were very
I
set on
was
going to that
so
direction.
committed. And I'm glad that they told me, they didn't say completely switch your career path. They just said, I wish I had this piece of advice when I was going through it because they both
Mm-hmm.
ended up pivoting and leaning more towards business and less on their legal side. And so they were like, before you invest all that time, energy, like it's not like, something you can easily get. Like it's going to be a lot of hard work that goes into it and like money. And so I was just like, okay. So I was grateful for that. I'm like, I can still, they're like, you can still do negotiations and stuff like that with a business degree. So if you're still gonna have to get somebody else's approval at the end of the day, why not just, get this one degree and then you at least have an understanding of what they're talking about over here without actually going to school for those 3 years to get your Juris Doctorate. And so was super, super appreciative of that. And I ended up, another opportunity opened up for me at Playboy where they let me. So when I had originally gone there for my initial interview, um, the HR professionals that met me were like, "Are you sure you want to work in our legal department?" And I'm like, "What is it? Why doesn't nobody want me to be a lawyer?" Like, I don't get it. Do I? And they were like, "Don't take this the wrong way. You're just too happy." And I'm like, "Dang, it's my
Oh, whoa.
bachelor's."
What does
I
that
know.
mean?
I was like, well, that sounds depressing. Like, okay, thank
Yeah.
you. I think. Like, I don't know. And so they're like, well, you just have a very bubbly personality, and we don't want that to dim you by working in legal. And I was just like,
Wow.
what? And they're like, okay, hear us out. And they're like, we have multiple positions right now that are open right now. Is it okay if we interview you for all of them? And I'm like, I just graduated with my
Wow.
bachelor's. Like, I'm not going to say no if you're saying, like, I need a job. Like, you can interview me for as many if that, like, doubles my chances of getting hired. Go for it. Thank you for doing this for me. And when they were interviewing me, they were like, I think you would be good in this role. But then, like, every person that interviewed me was like, I think you would be good doing this. I think you would be good doing this. And they were like, I think you would be good in our legal department, but I can see you also flourishing here, thriving here, yada, yada. And so they ended up saying, like, why don't you start at the front desk, like be our receptionist. And at first I was like, that is not what I came in here for. Like, I'm so
Yeah.
confused. And I really had to sit there and think about it. And they were like, you would be the first face that everybody sees when they walk in, when they leave. You would have like a quick like you would know the most about what goes on in this organization and who enters in what each department does because you have to have an understanding. You're the first voice everybody hears. And then they were like, and we will feed you different projects from the different departments that we think that would be a good fit for you. And then you can tell us which one you want to transfer to when you're ready. And so, like, I had to sit there and think about it, and I'm like, you guys are good at sales. Like, you make a good point. And so I'm like, I won't rule it out because at this point, I'm just like, I mean, I came here for this thing, but also I have to get to know all the executives. I'm the first face and the last face that they see. So I'm like, that's a very good like networking opportunity. So I was like, sure. I see all of their guests, all of their clientele. So it's just like literally I see everything that happens in this office. And so I did that. They ended up feeding me projects, and I was like, yeah, no, I don't want to go to legal. Like, this was probably a very extreme legal to like work with for Playboy, but I was
Mm.
just like, oh no, like this is a lot. But I ended up doing projects for like HR, for marketing, for event planning and production. I helped out with our international team. I even helped the executive producer. What is the name of that? The show that was on MTV with the Playmates and Hugh Hefner. I can't remember the name of Girl Next Door. I ended up
Oh, really?
helping that
Okay. Yeah, yeah.
executive producer, assisting him on another show idea that he was trying to pitch and like a book. And so it was like great visibility. I learned a lot. And in that process, I was just like, okay, well, I know that I definitely want another degree. I don't want to just have my bachelor's. And so that's when I was like, okay, I do think that I want to go and get my MBA. So I went and I got my MBA in 2016 and graduated with my master's in business administration with the focus in marketing um, in 2018. But like, even during that time, it when you take business classes, you kind of have to you have to take all of the classes. So coming from getting my bachelor's in communications, you go straight arts to going to straight business. I was like, oh wow, like econ, stats,
Ooh,
like
yeah.
what? I'm here for marketing. Like I
Mm-hmm.
don't understand all of this. It kicked my butt. Accounting, that was the hardest degree that I have ever earned, but like after receiving it, it's just like, wow, like they tried to take me out with this degree, but thank God I made it to the other side.
So for your graduate degree, were you focusing, like, did you want to go into marketing? It seemed like out of all the different roles you tried, was marketing the one that stood out to you?
Yeah, so I had ended up transferring into the marketing department at Playboy, and that was when like the business side of social media was really starting to take off, and I was very fascinated with the business side of it because I'm just like, wow, like all of these analytics, like the fact that you guys are really using like keywords and like this tone of voice reaches this audience, like we can't talk like this on Facebook because this is the audience clientele that's typically on Facebook versus Instagram. Like they don't want you to talk to them like that, like it's a younger clientele as well. So like all seeing like the data behind all of that and how data really plays a huge part. And back then, oh, I mean, not that long ago, but so much changed so quickly
Yeah.
that it's just like you really don't like social media was just like this is just something that we do, but like seeing like oh wow, there's actually a science to it, kind of creepy but kind of intriguing at the same time, like even to the point where it's just like wow, like when I get random notifications on my phone or served ads, I'm like, damn, these marketers are good. I'm gonna buy that
Mm-hmm.
too. Like,
Mm-hmm.
how they know me. Like, the
Yeah.
fact that that's somebody's job, like, again, pretty creepy, but also pretty fascinating.
After you got your master's, did you go straight into a marketing role?
So after I got my master's, I had originally planned to go straight into a marketing role. There were a few opportunities that I ended up shopping around for. I did do an internship while I was still in school and got a full time offer from that organization. But you know, when sitting down, it just seems like such a big decision after because it's just like, yes, there's this great opportunity, but then also trying to figure out like, what do I want for my life in the next couple of years? And like, do I want to move to this state? Am I okay with this city, this environment, this type of work? And like, maybe everybody doesn't approach it like that, but that's how I was thinking. And then I'm like, you know, one day I would like to have a family. Do I feel like I can have a family in this area? Like, am I okay with not being close to my family during this in this area during this time? I don't know how long I'm going to be here. And not to say like it's going to be a permanent decision, but like these were some of the things that I was thinking of, like, is this something that I'm willing to pivot into the next step, the next phase of my life? Is this how I see it to be? And for me, I am religious, so I prayed a lot on it to figure out, like, okay, help me to get some clarity in this decision. Like, would I be dumb, like crazy for like turning this down when it's just like you literally have a job offer before you even finish your degree and it looks really good, but I'm like, something about this just doesn't feel right. And so I couldn't put my finger on it. So I learned while I was getting my MBA that they have rotational programs, and it was the first time that I've known about something like that. And so I think it's pretty cool. The rotational programs is you apply for it in one organization, and then they give you the opportunity to do, like, think of it like mini stretch assignments or like mini internships within that organization for different areas of the organization. So like the role that I got offered was for like a marketing rotational, and it
Mm-hmm.
would be, I would go from different areas of the marketing department in that one organization. So I'm like, that's pretty cool. Like, you get to see a variety of, like, you learn about the different aspects of marketing or the different aspects of business, and then you can talk to different people within the organization and network. And after, you have the opportunity to get a full-time role in one of those said positions. So like, I could have my first rotation with social media, for example.
Mm-hmm.
If I like it and there's a job open there, they could offer me a full-time job there on the spot. Or I can say, like, oh, I really want to go into this next rotational, which is about strategy, like marketing
Mm-hmm.
strategy. So like, you can go, like, it's still in the marketing department, and then you have the opportunity to stay long term if there's a good fit for both you and that team. But I turned that job down. And
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I just felt like, something isn't like standing out for me. I don't know what it is exactly, but I just feel like,
Mm-hmm.
keep looking. Which is very funny, ironically, because then I went from that job to having another possible job offer. Still didn't feel right. And so at this point, my family is looking at me like, what the hell is wrong with you? You just passed up on two job offers for what? And I'm
Yeah.
like, just have faith. I believe in me. Why don't you believe in me? It'll all work itself out. Well, that turned into me being unemployed for over a year, which, of course, my family was like, is it all working itself out now? And I'm like, you don't need to pour alcohol on the wounds. I still feel like the choice that I made was the right decision for me, even though I don't understand why. And during that time when I was interviewing, it was like, some places were saying you're overqualified because you have your MBA, and then other places were saying, like, well, there's a gap in your experience. And I'm like, yeah, I was in school for 2 years full time. Like, I stopped working so that I could go get my MBA. And even though I was working while I was getting my MBA, but I had a grad assistantship, and then I was working part time somewhere else. They were saying, like, yeah, but those are mini spurts instead of like a consistent job history. And I'm like, I was in school. Like, come on, people. So that was a challenge and a hard pill to swallow. But again, I feel like everything happens for a reason. Ended up helping out a friend and her family. They had their own daycare, so very humbling. I was helping to teach preschool. Definitely not a teacher, and shout out to everybody who does that, because kids are they're entertaining and exhausting. And it's just like, okay, well, these are very important years. So like if we're playing games, I want to make sure they're educational games. But during that time too, I'm like, I felt like I was learning little lessons from the kids, like just seeing how they
Mm-hmm.
interacted with one another. And like having moments where I'm just like, adults can really hold a grudge, and like
Yeah.
they can be in their feelings about stuff. And it's just like kids, when they get mad, like literally they might like be mad at you for 30 minutes, and then they come back like they forgot everything that ever happened. And I'm like, you were
Yeah.
just mad at me, like what? And they're like, I love you so much. And I'm just like, love you too. Like I'm so confused. But I feel like it helped me with like patience and like other life lessons that ended up being very applicable for when I did go back into the job force, job, yeah, job force. And it was like, I don't understand this at the moment, but like I'm taking it all in because there were like many lessons like that I got out of like they I was helping them, but they were helping me as well. And during that time, I ended up finding another rotational program. But what was so different about this program is that instead of you rotating through one job or like one organization, it gave you the opportunity to rotate through a consortium of organizations, so like different organizations. And it was marketing as well. It was a marketing and advertising rotational program. It was called Ad Fellows, hosted or created by Verizon. And what they did was they got different businesses, different brands. So, like, Verizon would be the brand, and
Mm-hmm.
there would be like they work with their own, whether they be in-house agencies or different marketing agencies around the world. And so what they did was they had them and their agencies, and then got other companies on board with their agencies to come and work for this consortium where they sought out talent to go and really understand how things come to life when you're dealing with
Mm-hmm.
marketing. So you would rotate with one brand, and oh wow, it's been a while. Three, hold on, I have to count.
It's okay.
Yeah, one brand and three agencies. And so they would try and get you to rotate at the agencies that support whichever brand you went to. So like you had big
Mm-hmm.
name companies, like from a brand side, it was like Walmart, American Express. You had Verizon. Ooh, don't quote me again. It's been a while. I think when I left, there
It's okay.
was Petco had just joined on,
Wow.
and then you
And is this just for
just
marketing roles or marketing
yeah,
related? Oh, wow.
marketing and advertising. So like you would see how those ads really come to life, and so you would go to like, let's say, going back to Verizon. So for their, well, any agency or any brand in particular, like when you think about marketing, there's like media agencies that they work with to make sure that their ads are either on radios or billboards or on like commercials, or even the little ads that pop up on the internet. You have a media agency that you work with that tells you like, this demographic, like we need to put more placements in this area. Here's the demographic that we can cater to, that this ad would make the most sense for in this area, so that people feel like, oh, this is really reflective of me. Or and then you have your creative agencies that really work on like the campaign of it, and like how are we going to roll this out. And then you have the people who strategize of like, what can we capitalize off of right now, that's hot, that's it right now, like, or who can we work with for like brand partnerships that we can bring in to endorse this. Like there's different things that come together that make something up. So like if Verizon comes and they're like, I have a new product that I want to market, but instead of it being marketable for like everybody, this is going to be for small businesses. So then they would tell like, this is our vision, and then they would like brief the agency on what it is that they want and what they're thinking, and then they'll be like, stay within this realm, but excited to see what you come back with. Like, so yeah. So I thought that that was pretty cool because it's just like, wow, instead of me being able to do a rotation with just one company, I get to do it with four. And I had to move to New York for that, which was okay. Great for
Mm-hmm.
networking. And then the agencies were really big agencies too. So I'm like, this is a great exposure and great experience. And, maybe this is what it was that I needed to hold off and wait for because, like, just the network that I would be able to collect from this and then end up seeing, like, oh, a broad spectrum of things that I didn't even know were out there, or like that one company that I would have done that rotational within, maybe they didn't have all these different areas for me to learn from, or like have coffee chats with different people that really like, okay, what is it exactly that you do? Just curious to learn a little bit more. So ended up moving and doing that for, I think it's like a year and a half, 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
Again,
It's
time
okay.
ago.
And then, so yeah, I'm also curious because I didn't realize that you've gone through so many, so you tried so many different things. But then after, obviously, you did the marketing rotation. Now you're in DE&I. How did that shift happen?
Yeah, so this rotational program was really marketed towards underrepresented talent or diverse talent. So they were looking
Mm-hmm.
at, you know, people of color or women. And so, in a way, it was like a diversity program. Of course, when I was applying, I was just like, this is really cool. And it's like, oh, wait, I am diverse. Oh, wait, I'm a woman too. I checked this. I can apply. Going through that program, I was just very curious, again, with just how it came to life, and like, how did you all get all these businesses? Because like some of the businesses were competitors. So like, how did y'all all decide on coming together to make this work? And then like even like the puzzle that they had to put together for like, okay, this company is a competitor of this company, so if this person goes on this rotation, then they can't go to like this agency because this agency supports this competitor and this competitor. Like, it's a big puzzle. So I was just
Yeah.
intrigued by it all, and just being curious, like, how did this come to life? How did y'all get here? Like, even the different sessions that we had. So we had our different rotational programs, but then we also had like sessions as a collective. Like, you have your rotational assignments, and then you have a big group activity, and you are put into different cohorts, and you travel with that cohort through each rotation. And then that group, they have a project at the end of the whole program where they have to deliver whatever the assignment was or the case study was to a group of executives. So again, more exposure. And then while you're in each rotation, you learn from that rotation so that you can apply it to your end of like program project. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so just asking questions, asking how they did things on some occurrences, like giving suggestions, or yeah, some occasions giving suggestions of like, I think you guys wanted us to get this out of this, but I'm not quite sure. So
Mm-hmm.
asking questions and then being like, I think a better way to approach this would be dot dot dot. And then eventually they would come up to me instead of me going up to them and be like, so what you think? And I'm like, what do you think?
Mm-hmm.
And from there, I was like, you guys should really hire somebody for this role. And they were like, yeah, we should. Then they ended up making me a job offer. And I was like, oh, I did not mean me. Like, I
Oh,
meant
really?
somebody else. And then like after thinking about it and seeing like the other job openings that were available at the end of the program, between all the organizations that were part of their consortium, I applied to a few. I also applied to that one. Everybody was like, this job was created for you. And I'm just like, what
Mm.
is it? I don't know. I still wasn't convinced.
Yeah.
And they're like, you would be very good at it. I'm like, yeah, but just because you're good at something doesn't mean that you want to do it. So again, having that moment where it's just like, ugh, okay, let me weigh the pros and cons. Like, do I really want to do this? Like, is this something that I would be passionate about? And then at that time, because I'm like, I'm not making the same salary I would have been making getting that MBA degree, because this program was just for fresh graduates. So, like, they didn't even consider my previous experience before that, or like that I had an MBA. So I'm just like, ugh, taking that into consideration, because it's like, can I live off of this salary in New York? Like, it was cool for like 1 year, a year and a half, like thinking about this. I think it was a year. It was a year. Um, but I'm like, even then, like for me, even though that was a tough decision, it was like the networking opportunities will make it worth it. Like sometimes you have to make little mini sacrifices in the moment if you can afford to. Um, Thinking bigger picture, or at least that's how I've approached things in my life. And so, thinking of that, I was like, okay, well, I would still have exposure to all of these like big decision makers. And now, from instead of me being the ad fellow, being their stakeholder and the person that they have to work with on the day to day. And then I was like, I've also been through the program, so I can like say like, well, I would have liked this better, or like here's what my group got out of this, or like here's where we can fine tune this and make suggestions, because none of them, I brought something to the table that none of them had, which was actually going through what they had planned, so I could make suggestions off of that. And then I got to also work on behalf of the ad fellows. So I ended up being the ad fellow manager, and I was in charge
Mm-hmm.
of all of like, I was their mediator. They like when they had check-ins and stuff, I would be their point person for the people going through the program. But I was also the point person for the alumni. I ended up helping to bring the alumni organization, like more to life, and advocate for them within the consortium, and say like, if you guys want this, like, why you guys should like, there's a way for us to all work together. Like, you guys want them to, or
Mm-hmm.
you all want them to bring more talent in and advocate for you, and they want to do this as well. Why don't you all give them like a job board, like if there's time, or like different courses that they can still freshen up on their skills and stuff like that. But then also a way to connect like the alumni to the current class, because there was a gap there. I was only the third class, so again, it was still very fresh, but it was fresh enough, and we had enough, like we had three previous classes now, that we can start integrating the alumni with the current classes. I want to say they're on like class 7 now, 6 or 7, and they've
Mm-hmm.
expanded their markets. Whereas before it was just New York. Now I think they're in other areas. But yeah, and that's how I got into DE&I. I didn't even know DE&I, which stands for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, was like a job to apply to. Like, I was just like, when I was thinking over where I saw myself and looking at all of these jobs, what stood out to me was like, instead of me focusing on one facet of marketing, I got to do all of the things that I liked in one position. And I'm like, I love that I get to plan the strategy. I can work with our business partners, our stakeholders. I can, our brand partnerships and our those business relationships. I also get to work directly with the people that I'm trying to make a difference for, and it was very important for me that my work made an impact in the things that I did, and I can see, you know, how how it was impacting folks like right there on the spot, because every day isn't going to be easy, but at the end of the day, it's like, at least I made a difference for one person, and that is enough to get me through
Yeah.
today and get me to tomorrow.
When it came to marketing, it seemed like one of the things that stood out for you in terms of marketing was like those targeted ads and kind of like making stuff for specific audience and catering towards a specific audience and so forth. Do you feel like you get to utilize that in D and I as well? Like, do you see that side in D and I?
Um, yeah, so in my current role, I am our DE&I talent integration advisor. So I work very
Mm-hmm.
closely with our talent teams and our recruiters, and just trying to make sure that we are bringing in more diverse talent in the doors, and that works closely with like our brand partnerships as well, and making sure that there is a connection. So if people are like, oh, well, I can't really, there's this talent doesn't exist. It's like, yes, it is. Where are you looking? And I will help to like
Mm.
bridge that gap. But I also get to work with our marketing team now, which I'm like super excited about
Mm-hmm.
because I'm like, I know this. Like, I speak this language. Like, whereas everything else has been quite a learning curve. But like with our marketing teams, like, okay, well, in order for us to attract this type of talent that you're saying that you want, where are we like? Where's the messaging going out? How is the messaging going out? Are you speaking to them in a way like it can't be a one size fits all? So like that background gets to
Mm-hmm.
come into play with that too, and I don't know. It gets my wheels turning and it makes me excited because I'm like, yes, I know the answer to this one.
I love that. Do you ever feel like you want to go back into marketing, or have you moved on from marketing?
I would probably say I like where I'm at right now. Because it's like, I I like that I get to have my hands in a bunch of different things instead of working on the same thing every day. It's
Mm-hmm.
exciting for me. It's thrilling and it like piques different interests of mine. And not to say that, I mean, clearly you saw how excited I was just now about talking about marketing, but like I also get excited for like different puzzles. Like for me, I feel like they're different puzzles when it's just like, okay, we have this problem, how can we solve it? And then I get to use like marketing background, like I research everything because you should research everything before you make a decision, but like that's something like technically that's market research. Like you have to know what your
Mm-hmm.
competitors are doing, what's currently on the market. So like I'm still doing marketing stuff or things that I learned while pursuing marketing in my current field. And then it helps me once I have that research and the data points behind it to make a more informed decision of like, okay, so what's currently out there and what we can do, here's where I think we should go. Or like that's technically considered strategy. Like that is not something that I knew again was a role when I was in school because like I don't know. I don't know if things have changed now, but when I didn't learn about strategy until I was doing my internship after my first year of grad school. Like I was just like, oh, strategy and operations, like that's the actual title. So it's very interesting because it's just like, oh, I didn't know that this was a said role that somebody could do. I just thought, like, why isn't everybody doing this? Like, isn't that like what
Mm-hmm.
everybody should be doing in their job? And it's like, no, some people like focusing on the right now. Some people like thinking more broadly and thinking bigger
Mm-hmm.
picture. Like some people are a little bit more analytical, some people are more creative. Like there's literally something for everyone. And I get to work with our talent team. So I've learned a little bit more about recruiting and just trying to understand the impact, what it is that they're looking for, what's on the market. And even though I'm not the recruiter, if I go out and speak to other people, I can say like, well, here's what they're currently looking at the moment. So again, that goes into me feeling like, okay, I'm helping somebody at the end of the day, and that's fulfilling for me because I mean, it's no fun if you're the only. I always say being the only is lonely, and like why can't we have more seats at the table? I think we definitely should. So being able to help with that is very rewarding for me. And hopefully it makes an impact for my younger siblings so things are a little bit easier when they enter into the workforce.
I didn't realize for marketing there is that like marketing aspects of like marketing the product or service, but there's also more of like the employer marketing side, or where the employer is just trying to showcase themselves to potential job candidates.
Mm-hmm.
So there's like that aspect of marketing that I'm recently learning about. And I'm like, that's a whole side of marketing that I had no idea about. So I could definitely understand where it's like you're still using your marketing background, but in a different lens and in a different side
Yeah,
of the
now
business.
it's more so for like how are we reaching our talent? Like where are we showing up for the type of roles that we want them to be in? Like if you're saying that you want more people on art and animation and you need people of color, like let's look up some art and animation job boards. Like where is that segment at that we can target ads to where they'll see them in places that they're already going.
I wanted to take it back to when you were an undergrad. Just kind of talk. I know you. This whole session we've just been talking about your whole journey, and you've gone
I know,
through
I feel like I'm
so
talking
many
too
different.
much. I'm sorry.
No, no, no. You're totally good. This is what this is about. So I love this. But you've gone through so many different like pivots and even just like declining certain offers because it didn't feel like it was right for you and so forth. But I guess just looking back on all of this, how do you feel like looking back at all these journeys that you've been through?
The first word that comes to mind is grateful. Very grateful, very appreciative of the people that have helped me along the way, which is also another reason why I'm like, give back, like, pass it forward. Like, me gatekeeping this information, it does nothing for anybody. Like, me holding on to it or releasing it, it really doesn't, like, it doesn't hinder my growth. Like, what's meant for me will be. And if I can give you a leg up or help make things easier for you with knowledge I wish I had, why not? It's just about being a nice and kind human being. Um, I sometimes I'm in awe because I'm like, wow, I've come such a long way by being like, no, this is what I'm doing, like this is my plan, like nobody can tell me
Yeah.
otherwise. To now I'm just like, okay, next pivot. Like I was the person who was flustered in high school where it's just like, no, things have to go like this. It has to be like this. If there is like a sway in the plan or U-turn or a left instead of a right, I'm just like, no, this isn't what I thought out, and I would be frazzled. And I think like over the years with seeing like another good piece of advice that was given to me, like don't be so closed off to trying something new because you just never know where it might land you. I'm so grateful that I was open to hearing that because I'm so happy with where I am, and it wasn't something that I knew. I didn't know this to be a role. So like if you would have asked me back
Mm-hmm.
then, are you where you like where do you see yourself by 2023? It would not have looked like this. I couldn't have predicted any of this. Like it was all just following my intuition, my gut, and trying new things, being more informed instead of saying like, oh, I don't like this thing. Actually trying it out to see like, do you actually like it, or are you just saying that because you think this? Like there have been plenty of things that I'm like, I don't think I'm gonna like this, but I'll still try it just so one, I can have a better understanding of what it is, and then say like, yeah, no, I know I don't like this. Not I don't think I'm gonna like this. I'm like, no, it's for sure I don't like this. Or like it's not for me. Or for me in my role, I try to have like at least a bare minimum understanding of what whoever I'm working with is doing, so I
Mm-hmm.
can be able to communicate to them like kind of like if there it's like a language barrier, like you want
Mm-hmm.
to be able to understand them enough to where you can get your message across. Like if I were to work with creators, or like I mean going back to me working with HR now, if I'm like, I need to understand your language enough, the talent team, like what is it that you're looking for, so that when I go out and talk to different partnerships, I can say, here's what it is that they want, but I have to understand how their language in order for me to translate it over here, and then vice versa. So that's it's served me well.
I'm sure, yeah. It's interesting because even within teams in businesses, I feel like they have different language, different
Yeah, and
terms, and stuff
everybody,
like
even
that.
like the different personalities that you work with, like you have some people who are more are a lot more outspoken than other people, but it doesn't mean that just because somebody is quiet that they're not bringing anything to the table. It's just learning how to read people and their delivery and trying to get the best out of that individual, and making sure again they have a seat at the table and they feel safe and comfortable enough to express those ideas because we need those ideas. That's how we get innovative. That's how we go to the next level. And like you're meant to be there for a reason. Like if you weren't there, if you weren't meant to be there, you wouldn't be there. So while you're there, might as well speak up and say what you have to say because you never know. It might lead to the next best thing.
I have one last final question. So, what's one piece of advice that you would give to your undergrad self?
I think I've received it when I was an undergrad from other people. So I'm just happy that I listened to them. So I pat myself on the back, like get it, girl, because I'm surprised that I listened to that piece of advice. But I respected my mentors enough to be like, okay, let me do this, and I'm so proud of myself for actually doing it because life would look a lot different had I gone to law school. And like, it might be, even when I was getting my MBA, I considered like, do I want to get a dual degree and get a JD and an MBA?
Mm-hmm.
I hung out so much with the law students that people thought I was in law school. And I'm like, no, I'm not. But it's just like, those felt like my people. Um, and not to say that maybe in the future I would be opposed to getting a certificate or anything like that, but I'm very happy with the direction that my life has gone in and where I'm going at this said moment. And I'm curious to see what comes from it, but happy that my platform is used to help others.
Thank you so much for sharing about your very interesting career journey. You've gone through a lot of different stuff. Again, it seemed like you were just so set on going into law for like the longest time, and literally all the pieces fit together like a puzzle. And then you're
Yeah.
like, no, maybe this is not it. So making that pivot and then going into marketing as well
Yeah, no,
and kind of like testing that
I
out.
think it's
Yeah.
very important to like just another piece of advice that just came to mind. When I was applying for roles after I got my MBA, people said like, "Oh, they're so scattered and random because they were different." Like did receptionist at Playboy, office manager, then I went to marketing coordinator. I was also an executive assistant. Then I worked at Hyundai and I worked in their corporate social responsibility department and their DE&I, but it wasn't really DE&I. It was more I focused more so on the corporate social responsibility, and then you had like me doing social media marketing and stuff like that. And I had worked for a bank once, like as one of my internships, again in HR for when I said Universal Studios, had that entertainment, worked underneath that entertainment lawyer. And people were like, this is just all over the place. I don't understand. Don't be discouraged by that because now I'm at a place where in my current role, I can see that it wasn't random. It wasn't like coincidental. Like it was meant for me to learn something from each of those opportunities because I'm using it in my current role now. So I would
Mm-hmm.
say don't get discouraged if somebody tells you that. They just don't understand how to tell that story, which again is a marketing thing too. But you have to be able to tell the story in a way that it makes sense, and not everybody is going to know it from the jump. And sometimes you have to convince them or tell them in a way that it makes sense for them. Like, no, all of these things connect, and here's how it's going to help me get this current role or apply for this current position. Here's how it's going to help me in my day to day here. Because I have experience here, here, and here, I can bring this here and impact it like this.
I love that so much just because I have a psychology background. I'm going into business. And I think even with that, when I've talked to certain people about it, they're like, what? Why are you going to, how can you go into business with like a psychology background and so forth? So I really agree that it's the way that you market it and the way that you tell your story because there are connections that could be
Yeah.
made. It just may not be seen directly at times. You just have to make sure to tell that
Yep.
story. So that definitely
And
makes
if you
sense.
need help with telling that story, I got you.
Thank you so much, Deja, for the conversation. I had such a great time learning more about your experiences and everything that you've learned and how you got to where you are right now. And I love that you look back on all those times and all those switches and you still appreciate all of that and you like how that has built you up to where you are today. And you probably wouldn't change it because you're like, you know what? It got you
It
to where you
got
are
me to
today. So
where I
thank
am.
you.
Appreciate the journey, even when you don't understand it.
For sure. Well, thank you so much, Deja, for the conversation.
You're welcome.